This is the Radical SR3 XXR. One of the ultimate race cars to ever exist for pure racecraft and racing action. Thanks to an official release by Radical Motorsports along with real world data and United Racing Design's implementation of this car into the incredible racing simulator Assetto Corsa, you can now drive this yourself for free. In this video you're going to find out why it's such a fantastic race car and mod for Assetto Corsa. You're also going to find out that it has one huge glaring issue. In order to talk about this car, we're taking it to none other than Oulton Park. This car and this track were both made to come together. Now, if you've watched the channel and subscribed to us, then you will know I have a slight bias towards radicals. But hear me out, this bias is not unfounded. This bias is based in the fact that in real life, the Radical SR3 and radical cars in general are some of the best value for money race cars in existence, with them outpacing other race cars costing 3, sometimes 4 times the price, all whilst looking absolutely gorgeous. And in fact, it's often been said that Dee Gill herself uses this vehicle to pick up her tea bags from Lidl's. But enough of the preamble, I want to get the bad part of this mod out of the way so I can focus on the positives. You've probably already noticed what that bad part is, and unfortunately it's a very important part when it comes to simulated race cars. That of course is the audio, and the engine note of this vehicle in this mod is pretty damn horrendous. Now I would say, being kind to them, it's passable, but when you hit the limiter it sounds like a robot firing lasers at you, and the tone of the engine is just frankly torture to your eardrums. The shift sound, it's a disservice to the Radical, especially the Radical SR3. Radicals in reality obviously have quite a distinctive sound to them, but it's not an annoying sound, and it's still, despite being quite a high revving engine, a high tone engine, still actually has quite a lot of depth to it. So I really hope that modders can come in and fix the audio of this. Now we've got that out of the way, let's focus on what this does correct. So first of all, it is a Radical SR3, and it does handle like a Radical SR3 and move around the track like a Radical SR3. Now I'm in a somewhat informed position to know this because I've been in a real world Radical SR3, and I would also say the handling profile of this car lines up quite well to the Radical SR3 that's also in R Factor 2, though that's a older Radical that's in that one. I find when you have the same car in multiple sims handling in a similar fashion, often that's a good sign. Crucially though, Assetto Corsa delivers you this car with its incredibly rich force feedback for feeling exactly where the tyres are at on the limit. And that is really important when it comes to a car like a Radical SR3 and this Radical SR3, because to really get the most out of this vehicle, you really do have to push it quite aggressively, and you really do need to get onto the tyres. This car has a huge amount of downforce, especially when you're at speed and just generally when you're cornering and driving around. I think that's why it's one of the few vehicles that really attacks tracks like Oulton Park so well. It's small, it's nimble, it's not too fast, but it's got that glue, but then it's also got a little bit of that sexy slide action. And you really feel that with this mod car. You really feel that ability to push the vehicle to get more out of it. You're really lured as a driver into trying to get the most out of the car and the most out of yourself. What's really nice as well is the super progressive handling of this vehicle at the limit. Now you do have to be quick with the recovery of a slide, and it is very snappy, but there's so much depth to the slides that occur in this vehicle, and the slides that happen when you're at the limit, it all just comes together and makes perfect sense. And I think one of the key characteristics of real-world radicals, especially if they're set up very neutral with additional downforce, is that someone could get into the idea and the concept of driving with downforce and the crazy stick that you get from downforce with a very predictable profile. And as I say, things only really get mental and super challenging when you're really pushing this car to its absolute limits. If you stay below that or just flirt with that a little bit, everything happens with this vehicle entirely predictably. The end result is that you have a car that can accommodate new drivers, drivers that are yet to develop the skill of balancing the vehicle or using Assetto Corsa's amazing force feedback to know where the tyre limit is and then balance on that limit. This can introduce people into those concepts to then get them into that state of actually driving more aggressively. Something that many sim racers, even quite experienced sim racers, are really not familiar with, largely in part due to some of the older sims and sims like iRacing that literally punish you for driving aggressively or driving exactly as you would a real world car. iRacing just says no, you can't do that, you have to drive it in this one specific way. This vehicle with Assetto Corsa is the apex example of a car that lets you underdrive, balance on the limit and overdrive, discover your driving style, and in a way where you don't just die due to the physics apparently turning off. And in reality, and also within the simulator space, the dynamics of the Radical SR3 then really go to lend it towards really good close online racing. Because you've got so much controllable slip, it really does mean that people can do very late aggressive moves, very aggressive attacking moves, and then rely on the car balancing skills to make those work, or in my case to cause a huge pile up and drive into the wall. A really fantastic thing with Radicals as well is that they're fundamentally really light vehicles, so that makes them more nimble and responsive, but they're also not humongous vehicles. So again, on smaller tracks like Oulton Park, you actually have opportunities opening up that for larger lumbering GT3 cars, for example, just don't exist. This is like it's the racecraft deliverer, and this mod I can't wait to do community racing with. Now, still on the subject of handling, what I was also really surprised with was how nicely this car responds to the car setup changes. You do obviously notice a difference with the soft tyres and the medium tyres that are included, but the downforce configuration and the nature of how that affects the handling of the vehicle was really interesting, largely in that the car's very drivable even with a really loose rear, a neutral handling car that tends to slide as a whole, or a more understeery car. And you can really enjoy the different dynamics that occur from the setup changes with this vehicle. Obviously there'll be an ultimate setup for a given car track combo, especially in the context of sprint racing, but of vehicles in Assetto Corsa, I really just found this enjoyable, playing around a bit with the setup and feeling how the vehicle handled differently. Mostly because you can still control a lot of the situations and it all just makes perfect sense. I think some cars you can go a bit extreme with the setup and it's not satisfying, whereas this car was always satisfying and very much making it feel like it's your fault when you do something stupid, not some weird sim issue. And talking about doing something stupid, it's the classic final corner dive bomb, executed poorly. That's what I'm here for. Brand new Radical and a Brands Hatch, another amazing circuit to drive this type of car. Of course, Brands Hatch located in the middle of the Isle of Man TT circuit, as viewers of this channel all know. Onto the actual car model and the graphical qualities of this vehicle. It does look really nice. Of course, the Radical cockpit itself is a little bit bland, but that is just the nature of the Radical SR3 and the Radical SR3 XXR in this case. You will see though that it does have a really nice digital steering wheel display that all functions and works as you'd expect it to, and then all the interior cockpit details are as you'd expect as well. So it's really nice having all that stuff there, especially if you're driving in VR. where it really does affect immersion if it's missing certain components of the cockpit or the cockpit's super bland. Also, if you're a bit of a nerd and you're looking at the cars in a viewer, it's nice to admire all those details. More importantly though, the actual car exterior looks super legit. I think it's not the highest detail cars obviously in Assetto Corsa in that regard, but there's nothing with the car model whilst you're racing past other vehicles that stands out as being obtrusively wrong. Crucially, when you've got lots of other vehicles racing against you, it doesn't seem to impact frame rate negatively, which I think is the most important component. The LODs and the car detail of this vehicle are conducive to actually having decent frame rates. It's something that a lot of modders can get wrong, especially with free mods. The only issue I have noticed with the 3D model on my version of Assetto Corsa, and this could just be my specific shader patch settings, sometimes there's a little bit of LOD popping from the rear grate on the car, appearing and disappearing, and that can make it look like there's rear lights on the vehicle, but you're just seeing the tyres and they're not seeing the tyres. I think that might be a setting my end, but it could be something with the mod. Other than that though, it looks absolutely phenomenal. I mean, look at this vehicle here. You can't tell me that that isn't a glorious backside. Also, strapping half a biplane ring to the back of the vehicle just makes sense. It's peak performance in vehicular form right there as we try and nip up the inside, force him wide, off to the seaside, thank you very much. Now there's not much else to really say about this vehicle. It handles great. It doesn't sound the best, it looks absolutely gorgeous, and the spec of vehicle that this is absolutely perfect for online racing, be it if you're an absolute sim racing god pro, or someone that's just a little bit new and you want to be introduced into the world of downforce. It does make me wonder though why radicals aren't something that we don't just see by default in all racing simulators. This is literally the perfect type of vehicle if you want to have a all-encompassing, all-round vehicle that produces good racing. Instead, we are in this bizarro land of GT3 obsession. And you know the reason for that? It's because people know what a Porsche is, they know what a Lambo is, they know what an Aston Martin is. It's all handbags and wristwatches when it comes to what's popular in motorsport. Most people don't actually care what the racecraft is like, what the handling is like, or the fact that the Radical in Assetto Corsa is possibly one of the best vehicles you can race in sim racing. Now, instead, the vast majority of people will be driving GT3 cars in ACC or iRacing, with no real detail to the force feedback, sloppy tyres and tears dribbling down their face. Well, there won't be tears because they're just not aware of it. So actually, don't use this mod, don't try this mod, don't play Assetto Corsa, because if you experience this with a properly set up wheel or a holy DD wheel, everything else will be ruined for you. So nothing else to say other than absolutely fantastic job by Radical, with the Radical cars obviously. You're welcome to give me one. Really good job by United Racing Design, apart from the audio. Please fix the audio. And I'm really looking forward to doing some proper community racing with this, as I say. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to click the like button. I mean, you got this far in the video, you must have enjoyed it, or you've passed out and accidentally left your computer on, so thanks for doing that as well. That's good enough for me. Until the next video, I just have one more thing to say about the Radical. Sexy Radical, a giant rear wing. Let me drive my car right in. 4 wheels, gas, brake and clutch. The only way that you like to touch. It's a radical time, what a dreamy drive. Go along and click the link and install the Thanks for watching, guys. Goodbye.